Hi, and welcome to Sparkle Tart.
Hello, gorgeous Sparkle Tribe. Today we're going to be making something with some of my favourite products. So, Tim Holtz and Ranger Distress Oxides, Ranger Specialty Stamping Paper, some Jane Davenport Magic Wands, my VersaFine pad because you know I couldn't live without this, and a beautiful stamp from Carabelle Studio, and it's called Woman with Birds, and it's really great and it's almost card size, so there's not a lot you need to do. I'm going to make a bit of a fancy background around it, but other than that, this will be the hero of my card. So let's get started. So I'm going to use the Ranger Specialty Stamping Paper because it is beautiful and smooth. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is cut it in half, and on one side I'll create my card base, and I'm just going to use Cobalt because I know this will be a softer colour than the black for the background, but it will still show through the other inks I'm going to add over the top. Alright, so I'm going to apply some ink to this, but I don't really want the cardstock moving around while I'm doing it. So I've just added 2 strips of tape down here on the back, and I'm just going to remove it and stick this to my craft mat so it doesn't wiggle around while I'm colouring it. Alright, so I've got my Distress Oxides here. I've got picked raspberry, seedless preserves, broken china and fossilised amber, and a couple of little applicators. And I'm just going to add the Distress Oxides over my background. Now, because this is not my main stamped image, I can add it over the image as well, so I don't need to worry about being precise. Now, blending them over each other gives you additional colours. And just keep going over until you've got a really smooth background without any little streaky bits. So as you can see, I'm getting the most gorgeous rainbow background here. Now you might need to go back over with some colours just in case they've become too lost. And you can keep doing that with these. It's really a beautiful product between the specialty stamping paper and the Distress Oxides. You can kind of keep reworking it a bit to get the colour you like. And just keep in mind, the more you work it, some of the colours can get a little dull, so just be careful. Alright, so from those 4 colours, I have pinks, blues, greens, purples, mauves. It's looking pretty darn gorgeous. And if there's anywhere that the colour is just not varied enough, just go back in there with your blending tool and add a little more. Okay, now I just need to let this set. I'm going to give it about 20 minutes just to make sure it's nice and dry before continuing. For the next step, I'm going to activate some of the special superpowers of the Distress Oxides. I'm going to spritz them with water. But to get a variety of looks, what I'm going to do is spritz my fingers and then flick. So I'm spritzing off to the side here and then flicking onto the cardstock. Now, because it's the specialty stamping paper, you're actually going to get more reactive areas than you would on normal cardstock. So I'm going to get more Distress Oxide goodness in here than you would normally. So basically it looks bleached. Now I'm going to leave this on here to react fully and then blot with a paper towel. 1, 2, 3. Is that not so cool? First time I saw that, I was just sort of in love. How is that for distressed goodness? Now, it turns your rainbow background into something that was sort of happy princess into rainbow grunge, as I like to call it. And that is so pretty, so pretty. It's almost like you're throwing bleach over the top of it. Now, you do get a similar effect on normal cardstock, but it won't be quite so dramatic. The Distress Oxides activate and will be paler where you've got the water on them, but on the specialty stamping paper, you'll notice the effect is far more dramatic, far bolder, and you get almost this bleached effect, and I just love it. Now, you can leave the water on there to dry for a different look, but this is what I was going for today, so we'll stick with that. Okay, so for the main image, I would like to colour it with pencil later. So I've stamped on a piece of normal smooth cardstock. Now I'm going to use my shark's eye to colour in the hair, so it is lovely and black. and so that it really stands out against the background. Now, because it's such a large, bold stamp, often you don't get a perfect stamped image. Sometimes you need to go and perform a little bit of post-care. Now work slowly and try to leave the same areas of light that the original artist has. And you'll find that that gives you a beautiful, stark black hair to work with. And you would never know. Looks fabulous. And now I'm going to colour with the magic wands. Now this is the reason I had to swap onto normal cardstock, because the magic wands just work so much better when they've got a little bit of tooth to grab onto, and the specialty stamping cardstock just does not have that. It's far too smooth. So I'm going to start with Mystic and just add a little bit of sort of shadow. All right, so I've just added the first layer of shadow, and now I'm going to go in with Buff and make that a little more gentle by going over the top of it. I'm also going to use the Buff to start shading out. And then going in with a colour called Highlight. Ooh, that was taking quite well. Let me hope the white helps, because that was a little unexpected. Not so much. Okay. I can work with that. Now, I won't be able to go over this a lot when I'm finished, but at least it'll help knock back those unexpectedly dark highlight pencil. Okay, that's working pretty well, so I'm just going to do it in any of the other places I feel it's a bit too dark or needs a bit more light. I'm just going to give that a chance to dry. That looks a bit weird from your angle, but that, believe me, that is just the reflection. This one was eyeshadow, or 70s eyeshadow, I should say. This one is Mermaid. And Lucky Last Dragonfly. Just going to add a little lip action here with Candy Floss. And Heartthrob. Now there's also a colour called Contour, but I'm not going to go and use this until I'm sure that this is a bit more dry. And you can see that it's drying now. It's starting to look good. Okay, so I might just work on the bits down here with Contour. It's because I know these bits aren't wet. I'm blending it with a colour called Highlighter. Now, as I colour here, I can feel that the paper is still not quite dry, so I'm just going to let that dry a little bit more before continuing. At this point, it's about layering and blending the colours until you're happy with the contours of the face. Keep using the same pencil colours that you've already used, just so that it doesn't end up with too many things going on. And just press a little harder to get a darker colour. At the moment, I'm going to add a little bit of eyeshadow and a bit of additional colour, not any extra colour, just more of the same colour, both in white and in the darks, just to build up that sort of layering on the face. Now, my trick is to add a little bit of blue or whatever colour I've used on the eyes into the shadows, just so it all seems to sort of mesh together really well. And that's about it for the face. So once you've got the colours that you like and the shading and the shadows that you're happy with, colour in the little birds and then grab that Sharpie marker again to add the final touches of white. That marker worked beautifully over the pencils and it just really helps to add awesome highlights. So I'm going to do that to finish off my face. Now I had every intention of cutting this out and mounting it on top of my background, but now that it's finished and I see it coloured, I think it might actually have more impact if I leave this on a white background. But this one doesn't need very much. So I'm going to use some of Jane's AquaPastels to finish it off and a water brush. Now it really isn't going to need much. I don't want to add too much colour. So I'll stick to the colours I've already used. And if I need to make them paler, I'm just going to mix them on my little craft mat here. Now I'm just going to test each of the colours I'm mixing on a little piece of cardstock to make sure it's the right kind of look, and then add it. Now this is not watercolour cards, I'm just going to have to be careful not to add too much or else it might pill. And I also don't want to add too much colour. I want to keep it really pale. Okay, so that colour was a mix of Botticelli. I'm not sure how to say this one. Toulouse, not sure, and Van Gogh. Then this one's Michelangelo. Again, little test patch. Add a bit more water. Just so it's really pale. This one is Monet. Then a little Frida. A little water to make sure it's nice and pale. And lastly, Ingress. Or Ingres. I'm not so good with French. Okay, I know nothing about French. I'm assuming that's French. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Now I'm going to go in with my Jane Davenport Warm Seas Glitz Sea Marker. Just the gold. And I'm just going to go over the little dots and add gold. Now the original plan had been to cut this out and mount it on here, but I really like it with that pale background. So instead I've cut this to size so that this can sit over the top. So you still get that beautiful rainbow colour around the outside, but it's a little more subtle. If you wanted to go for something a bit bolder, you could do what I'd originally planned to do and cut this out and stick it onto that rainbow background. But what I would do is add a little paleness, so perhaps some white ink around the image just to separate the two, just so it pops. But that's going to be going on here. And I'm going to use some of the fabulous film strip ribbon, which is, I find it difficult to work with, but I really like the look. So I'm going to use some brads and add it to the ends here. But instead of just being a single strip, I'm going to twist it as best I can and get a funky kind of look. Once the front panel is dry, mount it onto your gorgeous rainbow background. Now, so that my little strip of film matches my card a little bit more, I'm going to add some colour with Copic markers. Now, not a lot, but just so it doesn't look quite so vintage. So I have a selection of colours that match what I'm already using, and I'm just going to add a little colour. Okay, this has now got a bit more colour. You can see when it's on a white background, you can see that it's got that beautiful rainbow. So it'll be a bit more interesting for my card, and it'll match the colours a bit better. So I'm just going to add the little film strip with some glossy accents. I had a look at my options for brads and eyelets. I didn't like any of them, so we'll see how this goes. Now, while this is drying, I'm just going to add some of the pink Coral Sea Glitz C marker to the edges of my little Tim Holtz word here, just so that you can't see the naked edges because it's not so nice. Now, whilst not adding a whole batch of colour, it does make that edge look more finished. Okay, so now that the first section is stuck down, it's time to add a little bit of curl to the top section and then stick that down as well. So sometimes you've got to play with it a bit to see how it might curl best. It doesn't always play nice, but I think this could work. So again, be ready with the clip. Add a little glossy accents and then clamp. I'm just going to clamp that one in 2 spots because this stuff is really quite strong and I want to make sure it sticks properly. Now, if I'm going to glue it on here, and I'm going to need to glue that tiny bit down a little, just so it sits flat. So I'm just going to put a tiny little dab of glue here, and then a bit more glossy accents on the back of this. And I'm just going to weight this with my tub of markers while it dries. So I've cut a piece of cardstock as my base and added a piece of orange card. And I'm just going to go around the edge with an archival ink pad. Assuming I don't drop it on myself, of course. And that just stops there being a white edge. So I've added a piece of white card over here just to break the background up a bit. And because I've put the adhesive tape on the back of my main panel already, it means I don't have to try and struggle with getting the tape on with all these little word curly bits. Now, I learnt a while ago that while making sure that this top layer is stuck down properly, it's best to use a piece of paper towel and press, just in case you've got any ink on your fingers. Or just in case you live in a humid area like I do and the moisture on your fingers reactivates any of the ink on the card. One fingerprint right at the end can just ruin the whole thing. Press down firmly to make sure that all of those layers of adhesive have made really good contact. And now I'm just going to look at it for a little while and see if it needs any additional elements. Now I'm kind of thinking it probably doesn't, but I'd still like to have a little bit of a play and, sort of put things on here and see how it looks to see if it improves the look or detracts. So I'm just going to sit with this for a couple of hours and see if it needs anything extra. And it's finished. Okay, so when you look at it all together, it is actually a beautifully soft rainbow effect. So let me get in nice and close so you can see the background I've created here on my little bit of extra card. And it's just the perfect complement to the colours in the actual image. The coloured Tim Holtz film strip ribbon, again, matches both the front layer and the back. And then I've just mounted it on a little piece of pale orange card and just inked the edge just to give it a little bit of extra finish. So all of those layers have come together to make a really pretty card using that wonderful stamp from Carabelle Studio. And to finish it off, I've added just a few teensy tiny little pearly gem things here, just to give it a little bit of, see that? A little bit of 3D in some areas. And I've used little tiny ones on the bird's little eyes here. Again, just so that when you look at the card, it's got a bit of something extra. Although I think that ribbon was perhaps 3D enough. That turned out so cool. Really happy. So I hope you've learned some great new techniques that you can use on your own card making. And I'll be back soon with a bit more. Bye.